Peter was always an introvert. He spent a lot of his time staying inside and being with himself. Peter was an artist, and he loved reading books. He was an avid reader and would go on and read for hours and hours. Peter used to live alone in the city, even though his work allowed him to stay inside and not leave his comfort zone. He would order his groceries online, and he would buy all of the things online. He even consulted doctors online. He heavily relied on the internet and rarely ever left home. He used to hang around his apartment all the time. The only time he got out was when he used to sit under the sun on the terrace of his apartment. He was a complete shut-in and had no real friends to be with. Peter had a traumatic childhood, and it deeply affected him, and it was seen in his behavior. The lack of his social skills was a direct result of that trauma. Peter was a real deep reader, and his choices of books were that of Plato and Aristotle. He would also often order books that no one had ever heard of or read. He often spent a lot of time on Amazon, scrolling through the ever-going list of all the potential books that he could read. He already had a messy pile of books on his study table, and over that, he would just keep on ordering more and more. Books were just lying there, lying on the floor, some half-read and some not even unpacked. As Peter was scrolling through the list of all the unknown books posted away on Amazon, what caught his eye was a dirty old torn book. A book that was called Schrecklich, which meant terrifying in German. At first, he just looked at the book for a while and scrolled away without thinking much. He went on to go back to his daily work. Peter ordered the dinner from a nearby place and started eating it while scrolling through his phone. He came across the same book again. He had already forgotten what the book was, and he decided to skip it, but mistakenly ordered the book instead. He tried his best to cancel, but he couldn't, and the order was placed. Turns out, the book only cost him $3, so he just went with it, because it seemed like a pretty good deal. He thought maybe, if it is one of those vintage original edition books, it might even make him a profit. It said that it will be shipped to him in 2 days, but the next day while he was working, the book was slid from under the door without any notice. He picked up the book, and it was old and really dirty. He dusted the book off, and to his surprise, it was a first edition book. He kept the book at the table and straight away went to his computer to search more about that book. He tried his best to find more about the book, but there was nothing that he could find. So he decided to give that book a read. He took the book and opened up the first page, and he saw that there was a text written in German. He decided to translate it using the computer, and when he translated it, the text said, "Now that you have opened it, you shall not stop reading, and you will have but 3 sunrises to start and end. And if you shall fail to do so, the Butcherfresser shall have your soul." Butcherfresser meant the book eater. Peter was laughing at the notion of a book like that, and he saw that it had just 30 pages, and he was quite sure that he could read them all before time. Not that he believed in such a story. He decided to read later and went on with his life without noticing the book. It wasn't until the 3rd sunrise that he saw the book lying completely unnoticed on the floor. Since he had time on his hand, he decided to give it a read since it was just 30 pages. He was pretty sure that he will easily complete it before the day ends. Peter opened the book and saw that there were now more pages added to the book. It wasn't the way it was when it came 2 days ago. He thought maybe he might have missed some pages, and he started reading them one by one. And as he kept on moving forward, he noticed the story was actually about the trauma that happened to him years ago. He kept on reading, thinking it was a crazy coincidence. But it wasn't until he saw the picture shared in the book. There it was, his dead friend. As he moved further, he realized the story is in fact about him. He kept on reading, baffled by who would do such a thing, and he was in his thoughts when he noticed that the sun was going down. As the sun was going down, the book seemed to create a different narrative, and as soon as it got dark, the 10 pages that were still left to read disappeared and were replaced by another single page. The page said, "You have failed to read them all, and now shall the Butcherfresser make you feel like these unread books felt." Even though Peter felt weird about it, he decided to neglect the whole situation and went back to doing his work. A few minutes later, he saw a book sliding through his door, and then it became frequent. The books kept on coming and coming, and annoyed by this, he opened the door and there was no one. And as soon as he closed the door, the books started coming again. He opens the door and stays there for a while. Suddenly, a book comes flying through his window and breaks the glass while it enters. As soon as Peter runs towards another window, a book comes hitting the window and breaks the glass. A bit of glass cuts Peter, and the book hits him in the face, making him fall on his back, and he's left unconscious. He wakes up after a while and sees that his room has been overcrowded by books, and he barely has room to breathe. He struggles and tries to make way when suddenly, one of the burning book comes sliding under the door. The fire that seems to be small was slowly getting bigger, and struggling through the smoke, Peter somehow manages to control the fire. He immediately leaves the house and runs towards the terrace. He started running and saw a dark, big figure of books was still following him. He runs away and hides in the same spot where he used to sit to get the sun. He felt the big dark books approaching him and was in a complete state of panic. Peter decided to make a run for it and started running. He runs to another door and then tries entering his room. He decided to burn the book, and as he entered the room, he fell into the large pile of those haunting books, and they kept on piling over him. And throughout, he tried to find the original book. After a lot of struggle, he found the book and decided to burn it for good. As he started tearing the pages, he saw that blood came out of the books, and a loud shriek terrified him. It was the books crying. He started tearing it page by page, and as he did, he threw them all in the fireplace and light up the fire. He used every book he could find to light up the fire. In his mania, he kept tearing up pages, and soon, all the pages were covering up the room, and every bit of them was on fire, and Peter was in the middle of that fire. He tried to escape, but the books were blocking the door, blocking all the ways of escaping for him. As the smoke started escaping Peter's apartment, his neighbors noticed and called in the firefighters. The building was evacuated, and everyone was brought out safe without any injury. Everyone but Peter. Peter was burnt in his room, in the center of the heap of books. Every book was burnt to crisp. Every book but one. A book named Schrecklich was still there in the middle of the fireplace, untouched by fire, and it had no damage. The recovered book was submitted to the evidence room, and a policewoman, known for being a passionate reader, stole that book from there. I've been sitting on this for a bit for a few reasons. It's really long, and I wanted to be able to gather facts to support my story. And quite frankly, I didn't want to type it up while I'm in my house. As you can tell with the stories on my page, I haven't been engulfed in the gray of this world since I was a child. Until recently, I had never met someone who was as sensitive as me. It was enlightening and equally terrifying. I've been renting my house from a family member for several years now. Since day one, I knew it was haunted. I could feel the energy change the moment I stepped inside, and I could also tell it wasn't necessarily negative. I'm not a stranger to the paranormal, so when little things would happen like items moving or going missing, inaudible conversations, and the other rooms, or even my dog looking at an empty corner wall, I wouldn't usually react, and now even nicknamed the ghost Bernadette and would jokingly ask her to stop. However, within the last 6 months, the activity has intensified. I've had individuals in my house who are complete skeptics, but they have witnessed glass thrown across the room and shattered everywhere, pictures falling from the wall, something or someone walking down the empty hallway and hearing it, and hearing people talking that weren't there. I even had to have my brother check that my gas alarm was still active because the random areas in the house that started to smell like rotten eggs. Halloween night, I had a very small get-together, 6 people. One of my guests brought her wife, who I had only met one other time. While my friends were playing games and passing out candy, my friend's wife, we'll call her Emily, pulled me to the side, seemingly upset, and stated that she needed to discuss something with me. She first asked if I knew about Mary. I'm running names through my head that my coworkers had mentioned, and I never heard of Mary. I obviously tell her no, and she proceeded to tell me a very detailed story about my house. She explained that I had 3 spirits in my house, a spirit named Mary, a spirit named Franklin, and then I had a spirit who is always with me, then Gary. She stated that Mary had died in the house a long time ago. Franklin had died on the land before Mary from a plowing accident and was still in its death state. She also confirmed my suspicion of extra activity. A few nights prior, in the middle of the night, I was in bed and jumping up from my sleep from a huge bang against my bedroom wall and a picture of falling onto the end of the bed. Obviously, I was startled and essentially spooked when I could see the indentation in my wall from what appeared to be something that had hit it. I jokingly said, "Not cool, Bernadette," and went back to sleep. And we knew about this. She knew he had hit my wall and said it was Franklin's way of trying to get my attention. That when things are thrown in the house or fall off the wall, that it's Franklin. Apparently, he is angry because I don't react. In my mind at the moment, I'm thinking, who's this woman? I don't know her, and I haven't told her anything to her wife about my creepy house. I'm opening with my experiences on here, but I'm very harsh in person because of other reactions. So I ask, how do you know this stuff? And her response still, as I'm typing this, chills me to my bone, because he's standing right behind you. My first reaction is look behind me. Nothing. Second reaction is to ask why I can't see him. He doesn't want me to. Third reaction is why does he want to scare me? He wants attention. Since that night, the activity of my previously mildly creepy house has been off the charts. I don't get spooked easily. I have seen things that you see in horror movies, but my house is scary. The energy has shifted. I feel like I am constantly on fight or flight mode. I am typing this at work because I feel like someone is constantly looking over my shoulder, and I don't want whatever or whoever is to read this. I know it sounds crazy. It's just my dog in and in the house, and even he has been acting differently. I've caught him multiple times sitting in the hallway, looking at nothing, whimpering, and then runs under the bed. I literally have to drag him out. When I'm changing clothes or taking a shower, I feel uncomfortable because I feel someone is watching me. The house is nearly unbearable to live in at the moment, and I've been at a loss on how to make it go back to my mildly spooky house. I have used my sage twice now, and I think it just makes it mad. Franklin, that is. With that being said, I have amazing friends and connections to the historical side of my town, with some research I found on Mary and some other interesting details. Mary Frank, 48, died suddenly in my house on August 26, 1919, from neuralgia. Her spouse, Charles Frank, held the funeral at my house. I haven't been able to find a Franklin yet. However, before the Franks occupied my house, it was a staple for horses. It could be a huge coincidence that Mary's last name is Frank, and maybe Emily didn't get a clear message. I'm honestly not sure. I have asked her since, and she still thinks his name is Franklin. She's even come back to my house and told him to stop. He won't listen. I do plan to keep on researching the area for a man named Franklin, but I'm not sure that there will be any documentation. Another interesting thing is that I do and did know Gary, and he has actually been brought up before. Gary was my mother's best friend's husband, who passed away from a heart attack when I was young. At the time, we lived on 20+ acres of land, and he loved to go hunting on our property. When he passed, it was his wishes to have his ashes spread on our land. I was told many years ago that Gary watched over me. I know the activity in my house is increasing. I'm not 100% sure why, because I am more aware now, but I don't feel in danger. I never have, because I know Gary is there.